You know, I remember when it was every 6 months. Remember that in the 70s?
No, I don't think I owned a car back then.
Well, for a while, I can't remember how many years it was. I heard it was every 6 months,
Yeah,
twice a year.
I got my
Hampshire.
first car in '79, I think.
Oh, this was in the 70s.
Yeah,
Well, that's right. You're really young.
I'm a 1976 Datsun B210 hatchback.
Yeah, well, probably by then there was once a year. I think they changed it sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have any other members that are gonna be coming?
Nat is up here in the, joining us,
Oh, cool. Hey, Nat.
and then, David Kahn is in France, Vicky is in Brunei,
Bhutan.
Bhutan,
I looked up Bhutan. It looks like. a
yeah,
nice
right next to
place.
Nepal.
And Rich is on his way to Greece.
Yeah, still.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna sit over here so I can see that.
You should say it. Well. These people are traveling all over the world.
Yeah.
Oh, we lost TV.
He had his hip redone. Doing well, Nat?
You have to unmute yourself.
You're on mute, I think.
How's that?
Much better.
That's better.
Yeah. You been walking around today?
Yeah, I'm having a solar installation, so I was doing a little bit of walking, but I don't know, the problem right now is just sitting down for too long, so I decided it would probably be better if I did it here.
You can at least get up and move around and.
Yeah,
Great. Well, thank you for attending remotely.
Yeah, we're lacking people.
So why don't we get started? We also, Nat, I'm not sure if you can, if you're aware, but we have a member of the public here. Sue McKenzie is here in person. So first item on, and Sue, I'm Rich Mengy. I know you probably know everybody else here. Everybody knows you. So first up is approval of the minutes of March 27th.
I had a few typos.
What did you have,
So
Tim?
item 3, the second line. The board discussed each of the issues and considered if that's they, is that supposed to be they, David? They needed
Yeah.
to be resolved. Or if revisions could be made to resolve the issue of clarifying, is that what we want to say, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. There's some typos.
Thank you for picking that up.
Yeah, I revised that paragraph over and over again, so it kind of got hacked.
Yeah.
Great. Anything else? If not, I'd accept a motion for accepting the minutes.
You need to appoint.
And yeah, let's appoint
So that you
Hebe
can
as a
vote.
member, and you were here last
I
time,
was.
so that's appropriate, and Nat was not here last time. Okay, so we do have a quorum to be able to approve the minutes.
Yeah.
So do I have a motion to accept the minutes in a second from Hebe?
Sure.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose? Okay, the minutes are approved.
So just to remind me, I've forgotten the COVID rules. People attending remotely are still full voting members, but you have to have a quorum in the room.
Correct.
Right.
And so with you as an alternate.
Yes,
then-
yes, I was
then
just-
We good, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. But Nat is still fully involved.
Yeah, and that is still fully involved.
Yes.
It's just, You have to have a quorum here in the room.
Okay.
That way, if for some reason you lose connections,
Oh, okay,
you can continue.
okay. Well, the, next item on the agenda is the current, housing, legislative bills, concerning housing, of which there are a number of them. And, I know, Tim, you've been actively involved, and I got a little bit involved as a private citizen.
Right.
And,
Yeah,
So,
I have a little information.
I'm wondering if you might be able to fill us in. There was also, you got a copy of the letter that the select board sent. And Nat, did you see this letter that the select board sent?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And they focused on, 4 Senate bills and 1 House bill. Although there are a number of other ones that, are of interest to various people as well, I'm sure. But, Tim, don't really want to put you on the spot, but, apparently they took testimony for some of these bills last Tuesday, this Tuesday, 2 days ago.
Right, and I couldn't go, and I don't think anybody from Lyme went on Tuesday. But we got a letter. Well, there's a law firm in Concord that's been helping with this. So, Rich Seigel, who's one of the attorneys, sent this out to give us information about what happened on Tuesday.
To whom did he send?
I should say, the law firm is working for
A private individual.
private individual, so it's not being,
Not for the town.
Yeah. it's
not
not
for the town, not being paid by the town.
Right,
And that letter's not public information?
No, it is not. That would go just to
right.
the people the firm is working for.
Right, but yeah, there's nothing that's a secret in here. So what happened on Tuesday was, SB 281 and SB 170, are 2 of the bills that we were looking at. They were both, pushed to next Tuesday. So the 15th. So that's one thing that happened.
It's 170 and which one, what was the other one?
281.
281. Okay, 281 deals with building on class 6 roads, I believe. Not a great idea in my mind.
Right. And I mean, I think I can tell you that basically what this, what happened at the meeting is it was a public meeting. The testimony on virtually all the bills followed a familiar pattern. Proponents cited the need for more affordable housing and claimed that local zoning was impediment solving the housing problem. Opponents included New Hampshire New Hampshire Home Builders and New Hampshire Housing Action. And they've had a lot of lobbying. Opponents argued these one-size-fits-all bills would erode local control, change the character of rural New Hampshire, raise local taxes, burden local officials, many of whom are volunteers, and turn the state over to builders and investors at the expense of local communities. Many of the opponents seem to be coming from a right libertarian perspective, not wanting the state to tell local communities how to run their business. This included homeschool advocates, vaccine opponents, and those wanting to shrink local governments and school budgets. So politics makes interesting bedfellows. As we have been warned by NHMA, which is the New Hampshire Municipal Association, the committee is antagonistic to the arguments of the opponents, with some members getting into a back and forth with the witnesses and challenging the witnesses, something that is generally frowned upon in the legislature. So I guess there must have been some back and forth. Yeah. So that was their take on what was going on Tuesday.
Hmm.
Um. Yeah, so the other thing that's, well, I guess maybe I mentioned this before, but Jason Osborne, who's the majority leader and is pushing all these, he has handpicked people to be on the committees, and there's usually about 20 people on a committee. So if the committee votes unanimously, or even if they vote 19-1 or 20-18 or something, then the bill goes into what they call the consent calendar. And usually what happens then is that, like, they'll take maybe 20 or 30 bills that are in this consent calendar. And because the committee has basically voted on them unanimously, they won't even be discussed, they'll just be all passed. Because they're trying to speed things up and, so what they're trying to do is get these bills on the consent calendar, so they aren't really discussed. So I don't know what happened to the other bills on Tuesday. Well, actually, no, so then what happens, like on Tuesday, when the committee hears the testimony, they take however long, a week, 2 weeks or whatever to digest the testimony, and then they vote, committee votes. And if they vote unanimously or close, then it'll go on the consent calendar. If they don't, then it eventually comes up to a vote by the whole House. Because these have already passed in the Senate, most of them, a few did, but most of them have already passed in the Senate. So then
You can click through and see the status of each one.
yeah. So, yeah, so I don't know what happened. We haven't heard yet because the committee hasn't voted, obviously. So if people are interested in doing something, the best thing you can do is to go down to Concord and testify. The next best thing is to go on the GenCourt, Google GenCourt on their website, and you can write testimony. You can just write several, I mean, it shouldn't be long, but because they won't look at it if it's too long. Just write testimony, and then you can submit that, and it'll go into the committee will see it, I think. And then the third thing you can do is just go on that site and just oppose or approve, just click it. That takes like 2 or 3 minutes to do that. And it doesn't take very long. I mean, if you know what you're gonna say, you can just type it out and just push it in. It doesn't take very long either. So,
Yeah, it's a little bit cumbersome to find where
well,
to
the way to do that.
enter that stuff.
Well, it should be, what you do is you Google New Hampshire General Court remote testimony. Just Google that. Then it'll come up right at the top. It'll say House remote testimony. You just Google that.
Mhm.
And then this form will come up.
Right.
And you put your name
Right,
and all that, and then you say, oh, then you have to put in the date of the hearing. And then you have to select the committee. And these,
and it's
most of these are
house or something like
House
that.
Housing Committee.
Yeah.
They're not every one is that, but most of them are the housing.
Mhm.
And then you say who you are, whether you're an elected official or whether you're a member of the public, whatever. And then you can click your position on the bill. And then underneath that, you can just type your testimony. So it's pretty, I want you to do it if you, it's really,
Yeah.
it's.
So I didn't see, I mean, I was doing, I entered some testimony on 3 of the bills. But I did it as a private citizen. I didn't actually see anything that indicated that that you would be a town official. I didn't see that.
Well, you have to say who you are. It comes up like member of the public, elected
Yeah.
official, and you're an elected official.
Oh, it did have an elected, well,
Yeah.
I didn't fill that out, but
Yeah, it has elected official, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, in your position and go
Mhm.
right down to it. So, yeah, it's pretty straightforward to do that once you, just Google that and get on that, yeah. So as far as our representatives, our 4 representatives, they're not gonna vote on this for maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks, who knows when it's gonna come up.
Murphy is one of ours, isn't he?
Who?
Murphy,
no,
No, there's Russell
I think he's in
Muirhead.
Hanover.
Jim Murphy?
They all live in Hanover, all 4 of them, and they only represent Hanover and Lyme.
Yeah, I
so-
thought Jim Murphy was one of them.
No, he's not on, no, there's Russell
Not
Muirhead.
anymore?
No, I guess, no, because there's Russell Muirhead, he's a political science professor at Dartmouth. Then there's Terry Spar, who I've been talking to a lot, because we've been talking about some other stuff. He lives in Hanover and he's I think he does produces television stuff now, you know, does documentary. He actually did a award-winning documentary on something, I don't know. And then there's two women, Ellen Moore, anyway, I have it down here. They're both attorneys. Both of the women are attorneys.
Oh.
Mary Hockham Phillips is one, and the other one is Ellen Morehouse.
I thought you told me Suzanne Prentice,
Well, she's the
She's a
senator.
senator.
She's
Okay.
our senator,
Okay.
From Lebanon.
and she's already voted, so she's,
Okay.
you know, kind of. So as far as getting in touch with them, I mean, we should, I mean, you can at some point just email
Sure.
them. I emailed them all, I don't know, a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago, and the two guys got back to me right away. I haven't heard anything from the two women.
Yeah,
But there's no rush, you know, the most important thing now is to do testimony, you know. Do it on the Gen Court.
yeah. I mean, my sense is that, you know, this was an effort, you know, a good effort to try to increase housing, but, to just take away all the local control, and I mean, communities are starting to do something about it.
Right.
You know, they're probably not moving as fast as what some people would want to do, but
Right.
I think given the political climate and the economic climate of the last,
Well, I was
month or two.
surprised that this letter went out. And that it was so sudden, without discussion.
I don't think that that's appropriate to discuss that letter, other than if that informational.
Well, I mean, it's
It's
specific it's a specific position from the town
from the select board, and that if you. wish
as
to discuss it
representative of
with
the town.
Yes, if you wish to discuss it with the select board, I would do so, but I don't think it's appropriate to discuss positive, negative. It is a letter that went out from the select board, that is the fact, and I don't think it's appropriate to discuss it at the planning board meeting. The pros or cons of the letter, other than the fact that they went out and that they're,
Didn't say anything except the process, David.
well, that, again, the process, that is an issue you have with the select board, not the planning board.
Yeah, I think my sense is that the most opposition to this is just taking away local control. It's, you know, that's the sort of the big picture that, you know, people are, because they also were saying in here that the majority of people that testified were opposed on Tuesday. So, and I think the sense was it was just because the state was taking away local control, which New Hampshire's had for 200+ years, you know, it's kind of going against the whole thing. I mean, we are the live free or die state, for goodness sake. So people, I think, are really incensed that just being jammed down their throat. It's sort of, I mean, to me, it's almost like what's happening on the national level, you know, in Washington. I mean, they're just, you know, doing this
yeah,
against people. So I think that's the real reason people are upset so much, because it's just mandating to the towns, and every town is different. So how can you have one law that goes for every single town in the whole state?
well, yeah, I think it really, yeah.
Well, I
It
mean,
opens up the towns to, I mean, it destroys the zoning that the towns have worked
well,
on
are we
for
gonna
years.
talk about how we feel about these things, or, I mean, because the town has already taken a position.
The select board has,
Yeah, but
yeah,
I think even at this point, it's all individual now. I mean, the planning board's not gonna have
yeah,
we're not gonna have an opinion.
I don't-
As the planning board, it's just whatever people wanna do, I think. You know,
yeah, I don't see the planning board having time to put together something by next Tuesday.
no, I mean, if
So I think
individual
it
people wanna
would-
do
Two
it,
members missing.
Yeah,
yeah.
but
But as a
I
planning
think
board,
whether you're in favor or you're opposed to it,
Well,
Um,
it's an item on the agenda to
right.
talk about
And,
these
and
things.
so that,
right,
um,
but you may be in favor of some, against others, you know, these bills. I mean,
Yeah.
they're different, sort of.
so I wanted to just put it on have it on the agenda so that we could talk about what the status of some of these are. Um, and encourage members to, enter testimony or go down or
Yeah, just
contact
on an
your,
individual thing, yeah.
on an individual basis.
Right.
Just because that's kind of that's the nature of what the planning board members are dealing with. So I think that, we have a little better understanding of the planning and zoning than, the general layperson does.
Right. Yeah, and even if you're a member of a board or commission or whatever, you can testify individually. You don't, it doesn't mean you can't testify there because just because you're a member, because you're not representing that board, you're saying, I'm a member of that board, but I'm not speaking for that board. I'm an individual. Because I think the law firm, they talked about that and they said, yeah, you can do that.
Yeah. So, I don't know, I mean, I've had experiences with, this class 6 roads, and, I think it's a really horrible idea because the first person
Yep.
that does this is all gung ho and then, in 10 or 20 years that either the property is transferred or, descendants of the original owner come in and, once people start paying taxes, they get a little bit testy about the services they're provided. And when, they realize that they're not gonna get a school bus, they're not gonna get a fire engine. They might not get they won't get plowed, they won't get, emergency services.
We actually deal with that in the town office. There have been several complaints this year from a resident that actually built on a class 6 road, agreed to everything and is now unhappy that they don't get plowed out.
Yeah.
And even though they were the ones that agreed to it.
Now, David, there is a process though that would allow a person to upgrade a class 6 road to a class 5 standard at their expense.
Yes, the select board,
Does that come under the planning board or?
no, it'd be
or
under
is
the
that a
select board. The select board is the one that is in charge of accepting new roads, so it'd have to be the road would have to be brought up to a class 5 road standard.
Yeah.
And then I think most likely the select board would put it up to a vote at town meeting to accept the road. Yeah,
Yeah, right,
because of the cost of maintaining it from there on,
right,
is the town willing to do it?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, well, I'm not sure, but I think in the last 30 years or so, the town's never taken over a road, I don't think, have they?
Out, Road Nate's on. Was a class 6, and then,
Oh, Rusty's development,
the Rusty's development, that was all class 6 roads.
and they did take that.
And they did agree to,
Maybe that's the only one.
that's the only one that I know of in the past,
Yeah,
but those were also brought up to, class 5 standards before they were accepted.
Hmm.
there were a bunch of houses.
Well, that was to, they were brought up to class 5 standards so that they could subdivide.
Oh. Yeah. Well, yeah, and SB 84 essentially says that you can't have any lots bigger than 2 acres, which is, not great for a lot of parts of town if we're trying to protect certain things.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really opens up the town to some undesired end results potentially. And yeah, I just don't, I don't think it's really the state's, it shouldn't be the state's purview to impose on us regulations of that sort.
Right.
But
Some of them seemed quite reasonable.
Yeah, some of them, like, for instance, there's one about ADUs, and I think basically it's saying you that you have to be able to allow a detached ADU.
Yeah.
Which we already do, so it's not really gonna affect, I think that it increases the size of the ADU, so like, we might wanna do that anyway.
Yep.
So that one doesn't really
You know,
affect the town, but. The other thing is that some of these are just really written so poorly, they're so. Ambivalent, and it's hard to interpret it, so it's gonna be. I think, HB 410 is one of those, like written ridiculously.
Well, the other one, which it sounds like it was postponed, SB 170, which would allow lots with just 50 foot of frontage.
Yeah.
That,
Mandate 50 feet is fine.
yeah. I don't believe that is the, consistent with the character of our community, other than in, certain areas.
Certain areas, yeah.
But to allow that throughout town, that's what I'm understanding that is saying.
Yeah, that's my understanding, that any lot, regardless whether it becomes if the 2 acre passed or not. Even if you had a 5 acre lot, that would allow 50 feet of road frontage, and that typically is going to cause, where you do a development where you have one lot. 50 feet of road frontage with a 50 foot strip going back to your other 2 acres.
Yeah,
And you have all these little flag lots that are.
Yeah.
That's the type of development,
I think the majority of these were written. And by people that really didn't study the implications that much of what,
well, if you're looking at a town that has, all paved roads. And access to services. And it's huge lot requirements, that I could see where dropping those down.
Right.
But they didn't think of back acreage when you have, lots like we have that are out on Dorchester Road, Grafton Turnpike. Where dropping it down to 2 acres and 50 feet of road frontage would put a huge hardship on the road. The roads just can't handle that kind of, traffic. If you had got a 10 house development. That added traffic.
Yeah.
It would definitely raise our property taxes.
Oh, you would have to
No question about that.
widen the road, you would have to. Which was going to definitely increase the cost of maintaining it. You would, look at Franklin Hill. Just that corner coming down onto Dorchester Road, if you were to add houses on those lots out on Franklin Hill. The amount of traffic coming down. Onto,
Yeah.
that would be.
That's already a dangerous
It
intersection.
is, and then, again, Acorn Hill, bringing that many more cars out through Tannery Falls every single day. It's,
Well, I think it's premature and scattered. It's by the definition of.
yeah,
premature
and it just, the road system is not designed to handle that kind of traffic. Again, you look at Route 10, Route 10 South. Every single lot on Route 10 South has deeded right of ways from the state when they widen the road. They get no more. The state will not give them any more. And so I don't understand how you could put 50 feet of road frontage in 2 acre lots without having access to
Right.
the road, other than putting in frontage roads. And so now you have to put a bunch of roadway in there along with lots.
It would be bad.
And then, you have a nice, fast route to get into Hanover at 50 to 55 miles, depending on where you are. You start bringing a lot more traffic onto the road.
And you have traffic lights.
And not necessarily lights, but the state may decide that it's not safe to continue 55 through there and drop it down to 40. And you've now lost your high-speed access to Hanover.
Right.
And it's not just for Lyme, it's everybody coming down from the north. Basically from, anyone who commutes.
Yeah.
And, the same thing, going Route 10 north. you can run into the same problem of having to drop down those speed limits.
Mhm.
What about HB 631? What did you guys think about that one?
I don't know which one that is.
That was mixed use developments.
Oh, for residents in a commercial zone?
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know.
But we don't have any, the zoning allows for that. And we have basically,
Yeah, that's right.
3 commercial zones and residential use is allowed in all 3.
Right.
So it
Yes,
really
that-
doesn't affect the town in that the town always allows it.
I
Yeah.
guess the plan development thing was part of that.
Yeah, plan development, again, I think that's why I put it on the list
Yeah.
of things for the board to look at.
Yeah,
Now, I mean, I appreciate the work that the group here does, but I think that they are rather a advocacy group without diversity. Everything is no.
well, no, I think, yeah, I mean, some of these are.
I mean,
are
I
going to
thought
be
this-
bad for the town. I think others, there's few we talked about would be fine,
You know,
wouldn't affect us.
HB 457, why would they oppose that?
Which one is that? Which page was that on?
Bottom of this third page.
Oh, well, that's the. I think that's the old college student, how many college students can you fit in a? In a dwelling?
Mhm.
Apartment, yeah.
No, I think,
I don't know that I have an opinion on that, but, I can tell you, having lived across the street from a house that had 4 or 5 Dartmouth students in it, it was not,
well, I mean, you see, it's not
Harmonious.
just gonna be college age kids, it's gonna be senior citizens at some point. Or group homes or all of that kind of thing, so,
yeah, well, I don't know that it would be, group homes, or, I mean. I mean,
or senior citizens or, you know.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
yeah, no, they're definitely. I mean, and, you know, I think one of the things they're talking about is, just people who aren't married. Yeah. That live together. Yeah, like I say, I don't have a strong opinion on that.
Yeah, I think it's.
Yeah, I just sort of felt like they weren't discriminating
Yeah,
adequately on things that really were about local control and
yeah,
things that really,
again, I mean, if you know, if you're living in a college community and all of a sudden, you know. The big house next door is housing 10 students. You probably would have something to say about that, or many people would. Maybe not you, maybe, but
well,
a
I mean,
person,
you can base things on behavior rather than
yeah,
counts.
yeah,
I also think that's one of the issues that there's one on limiting parking requirements. And, you know, I understand what they're trying to do is to, allow you to maximize the use of a building space, but if everybody in the unit or on the units have cars, where are they going to park? If you
Yeah.
don't have,
Well, they said one per unit,
yeah,
or 1.5 if there are a bunch of them. 1.5 parking places per,
mhm,
and if you have 2 people per unit, and again, Lyme, there is no public transportation.
Yep.
And so every person in that unit needs a car. And you run to, having cars parked all over the yard, all over the lawns.
right,
all
but
over the road.
it's saying the municipality can't set the maximum
Yep.
higher than that. I mean, functionally, what happens is, you have to do it in places like Lyme, so
Yeah. and
it's
that's,
kind of a moot point.
Yeah, because we have 1.5 now
yeah,
per unit, yeah.
I mean, it seems like many of these bills were written for populated areas.
Manchester and
Yeah,
Nashua.
and for big
Yeah.
cities and,
Yeah, well, that's what I meant when I said I think they people that wrote them didn't think about the implications of,
Yeah,
most of the small towns in New Hampshire. I mean, one thing that's been suggested is that there could be an amendment, they only affect towns with a population greater than 15,000. Which would.
Yep.
Solve a lot of problems, but I don't know whether anybody's going to amend that, but see, the problem. Well, I shouldn't say problem, but because these committees have been handpicked. They're not. Amending stuff and they're not, they're trying to get them so they aren't discussed. So, I mean, it's just not good. It's not democracy,
yeah.
Did we want to go to Sue?
What's that?
We want to go to Sue has anything she wanted to add?
Sure. Sue, did you have any comments that you want to share with us since you came out to this meeting this evening?
Yes, number one, this spate of legislation comes about because of the highly restrictive nature of the zoning in many communities, not just Lyme, but many communities. Why are we having all this legislation come up all of a sudden? There's an extreme shortage of housing and people are in desperate need of affordable housing. I mean, as one person wrote to me and said, I don't want to live in a gated community. Lyme needs more people,
Mm-hmm.
not more mansions. And I just think that being restrictive, this legislation is evidence of a problem. There is a problem. And it needs to be addressed with an open mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's certainly, I think most people realize that, that there's a lack of housing.
Desperate
Yeah.
lack of housing.
Uh,
Yeah, people.
And I guess the question is how you get there and
I think we have to,
as a country, I mean, it's not just a New Hampshire issue, it's a,
right.
countrywide issue and.
Yeah,
So
so I think,
we're dealing with Lyme, and I asked, when was the last time a house was built for less than $1 million in town?
Yeah, and I don't know how, I mean, that's the.
I think
the
Rusty's
problem.
is, the house over here, Rusty's is the only one I can think of.
oh, yeah, the one he just did, oh, yeah, that's less.
I mean, houses come up on the market and then they get gobbled up and they become rentals or Airbnbs and. Or people are not living in them. I mean, it's the whole.
I mean, one of the big
It's a whole
things-
economic issue that
Right,
I'm not,
Because I think, Sue, one thing the state could do, if they really wanted to, help with affordable housing, is to do more grants. Because we figured out that essentially it's impossible to build affordable housing. So it's impossible to build affordable housing, say in Lyme, unless you have some kind of subsidy or grant or something.
right.
It's
But
impossible. So the state should be doing more, they should be putting out more
there are
money
different
for that.
modalities, there are different, prefab houses,
Right.
modular homes.
Right,
And
right.
even manufactured homes today, they're not what they used to be,
Yeah.
and there's no reason wwhy those shouldn't be allowed in town.
They are allowed.
Oh, they are, anywhere, yeah.
I just approved a permit to actually, it's a replacement of a modular home. And that actually, I personally own a modular home, that's where I live.
Modular or what we used to call mobile,
A double wide is what you would call
double,
it.
it's a trailer,
Manufactured.
Yeah, manufactured.
manufactured.
She bought a very similar model to mine. I bought mine in 2000. I paid $70,000 for mine. Hers is the same size as mine, little different layout, but not that much different. And she paid over 200,000. And so that's the economics without having, as Tim said, some sort of grant programs that can help people put houses up at a reasonable
Mhm.
I mean, Hanover's doing it by giving them the land and running the infrastructure for them.
Lyme doesn't have any infrastructure. That, we could run, we talked, with Jonah Richards, who is a builder, but he does mostly over in Vermont, next to Chapman's, just a little bit north, that building. If you look at the Chapman store out back, the old barn that's being worked on, he's doing that, and then what was called the Colby block, which is the burned quite a few years ago. He's putting in more housing there, but that's all through grant to get it going. And in talking with him, he said, there are no similar programs in New Hampshire.
Right.
And so, I think for lower income houses, and senior housing, senior housing, the planning board put in the zoning, a whole section on promoting senior housing. And the state came through and said, well, if you do anything for senior housing, you have to give those same, promotions to every single type of housing everywhere in town. And so even out at Dorchester, and the
What do you
Dorchester,
mean by the state?
the state legislature, they
Mandated it.
they mandated it, said
But
they
didn't
passed,
that was rescinded, wasn't it?
nope. The senior housing, because the planning board knew that there was the
They-
possibility that this,
They put a poison pill.
they put a poison pill to avoid it because it could cause issues with,
Yeah.
Well,
putting higher density housing all over town where it doesn't make sense.
well, that's not likely to happen very well, not with this zoning the way it is now. High density housing, and there's gonna be some adverse effects, but there's gonna be some pluses too.
Yep.
Nothing comes without both,
Mhm.
and we've got to give some room to allow more expansion, more housing. Even if does mean more traffic. That's life, it's not gonna be overwhelming, Lyme is not gonna get overwhelmed.
I think that, that's one of the reasons the planning board is looking at, doing a housing chapter for the master plan to drive changes in the zoning. And that's the legal way of changing zoning, is to have a master plan that backs that. So the planning board
How long
is
have you
looking
been
at,
working on that?
they've been working on it quite a while,
How many years?
I think it's just
Well, we just started.
just a year ago.
yeah.
Last summer.
Not even.
Last summer.
it's
Yeah,
been
so not even a year.
not even.
Yeah. So, well, Sue, thank you for your comments. I think maybe we should move on from this legislative bill discussion. That I would, if you feel inclined, providing testimony, I think is a good mechanism for us to at least feel like we've been heard or we've made an attempt.
Right.
And so if you feel so inclined or have friends who want to comment either way on some of these bills, I'd encourage you to do it. It's not too difficult to do.
Okay.
Thank you. So let's move back to the master plan housing chapter discussion. And we had some sample questions of what we might want to ask the townspeople if we were to do a small survey. And
Right.
I think that we need to go back to kind of think about why we are doing this, and basically we've got this housing master plan section that we're eventually gonna write, and we've got some goals. And we want to get a sense from the community as to whether our goals are realistic and get some ideas on how we can accomplish those goals. And I think that, Hebe, did we get, comments from you on that?
I don't think so.
Okay, we didn't.
We on the list of questions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were gonna, everybody was gonna come up with 4 or 5 questions, and I guess before I'll preface that by saying, Rich Brown also suggested, well, geez, he liked the sandwich survey that was done as a result of them getting a grant and having a consultant working with them. And I think that what we're really trying to do is try to get a flavor of what the community is looking for and would tolerate or allow. And I think I'm thinking we don't have the bandwidth to be able to do this big survey that Sandwich did, and I think it also might be premature to do that. I think if we could come up with a smaller survey that gives us a sense as to what the town wants us to do, then we would have something that we could then state as goal, we could work with the goals that we have and be able to flesh out that master plan chapter.
Yeah, because there's no goal
So-
to try to get an accurate reading of the town, right? I mean, somehow.
Yeah.
With a survey. It's not easy, but.
It's not easy, and it's gonna be difficult for us to do that, because we want to make sure that people take the questions under context, and have some basis for understanding what they're saying, other than, well, we should just allow anything. I mean, maybe the community would be in favor of that. I don't know.
Right.
But I think that our questions want to help us suss that information out.
Yeah, I think my feeling is that it's too big. You
The
know,
survey,
the whole
The
concept of
sandwich
the whole, not just this, the sandwich one, we could choose a piece of it.
yeah,
And, but thinking about a housing chapter for all of Lyme, I think we don't need to do that. I think, there's certain things that we know we don't need to mess with, the skiway zones and all of that stuff. What, if we come up with some concrete set of goals that are like, we want to increase infill or enable barn conversions, or, some increase residential development in the
Right.
south, the Route 10 South commercial zone,
More specific.
very specific, and then say, how does this sit? And these are the rule changes we think would help that.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that's good. Yeah, I think if we have a questionnaire too, though, with boxes that you check, so you could do it pretty quick.
Oh, yeah.
We could have a fairly long questionnaire, I think people would do several pages, so we could ask quite a few questions, I think. As long as we just make boxes,
Well, I think, but I mean, the problem that we always get into is that we want to give background information to explain things. And
without
that,
being super biased and stuff like that.
Exactly.
You have to explain some stuff.
right, and that's why I'm thinking that, fewer questions and more explanation, or a specific example
Yeah,
would work better.
Yeah, I mean, I think one basic question is, do people want the school to grow a lot? I mean, that's kind of a basic question for the whole
Well-
town, so that would be nice to get a sense of that, I think.
Well, we've already found that, I mean, they say they can take 30 more students.
Right, but I mean, do people in town wanna have more than 30, what do they feel about this growth of the school? I mean, I have a feeling that if you talk to most of the parents, they'd probably say, we like the school the way it is. We don't really want to have
Well,
it any bigger,
I-
but I don't know. what
there's
people
some
would say.
discussion of sending the middle school kids to Hanover. So that would open,
Pay for them to get ahead.
right, they're cheaper than having them here, actually.
So that'd be seventh and eighth grade.
Seventh and eighth, or sixth, seventh and eighth, it could go either way, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Well, but
And
anyway,
that means that, there's that much more space.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So I,
But do they want, do the parents want the school? I don't know. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what people thought, you know. Cause I know that Lyme traditionally has never wanted to have more than, I think it's like 14 or 15 kids in a class. So, which is lower than most, in
Well,
a lot of schools.
most of them are 19 or 20, and if it goes over that, they
Yeah,
split.
maybe it's not, but anyway, yeah, so there's a point where,
Yeah.
but we are lower, we've always been a little smaller than most schools, so, or a lot of schools. So then they split the class.
Right.
But, and that's what parents want, I guess, to have a smaller. Smaller class sizes.
But I mean, the school's got capacity for quite a number of houses.
Well, maybe. But see, we're there again, Lyme is so unique, because most towns are losing school population. Ours is staying the same pretty
Right.
much. Only because there's not enough housing.
Right.
And with all these people every fall that come to the principal and say, oh, I'm just trying to get my kids into Lyme, we can't find a. So we just have to remember that if we increase housing in Lyme, we're gonna get more.
Right,
kids
but it would take,
percentage-wise.
I'm saying, to get 30 more students would take an awful lot of houses.
Yeah, 15, maybe 20. If you had 2 kids. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's why, Lyme is so unique though, because we are different than most towns in the whole state where, people are just dying to get their kids in the school.
Well, I guess I'm wondering if people had any thoughts about some of these. I happen to think that Nat Niles did a really good job.
Yeah,
Because he's got some good narrative there. And he's got kind of multiple choice, for looking at options, what percentages of, single family homes versus, multi-unit homes and cluster house development and those sorts of things. I think he did a good job, Nat, there. And I'm wondering whether there's whether we've provided enough information there to help assist people, understand what they're being asked to address.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, the way that I approached this was simply to ask the big question first. What is your feeling about a high rate of growth in Lyme? And I think that's an important first question, and the trick is to ask it without any bias, but to provide the information. And in particular, I thought the key information was the regional planning board recommendations. And after that, that is a key question, but depending upon how it turns out, we're going to want to know the next 3, which are, what, where, and what about affordable, which were those I thought were the key issues, and so the issue that I had writing these was just to try and work a question with enough information to it that and without bias. So that was my goal. I think that the weakness of it maybe would be in question number 4. I think that gets a little bit into the weeds. And I'm not sure that everybody would agree with the definition that I have used, or that, those numbers would resonate. you really would have to know something about rental properties to know what a rent is or and what you should get for that rent, et cetera. But those are things that I thought you all could help with, but
I thought that the questions were structured well, but I was not, in question one, for example, talking about twofold and threefold. I thought it would be perhaps better to actually put the number that would be twofold and threefold as being much more accessible. It's a,
Well, yeah, he does have that right underneath it. It may not be formatted on your,
yeah, it's not, there it is. Okay, it's
So-
not formatted. It's sort of slid around.
yeah,
But
on your
yeah,
phone
okay.
there.
And then, having a percentage that locks you into running up to 100%, it might be easier to, like, how many units people want of each kind.
that I thought would be harder to figure out.
Yeah, so that'd be units per year.
I mean, yeah, I think that would probably be. I guess, yeah, on your question number two, are you thinking over the time frame from now till 2040?
For all of these, I'm
Next
thinking
15
over the
years?
time frame between now and 2040.
Yeah,
Uh,
so,
At
Okay.
least if I put that in, yeah.
yeah. So I wonder if it would work out better to say, assuming Lyme were to increase the number of houses by 50. How would you break them down
Yes,
by number?
yes.
Um. So that the total came out to 50, or we could say if.
I
I
still
don't
think
know,
percentages are easier, but
But what if somebody says, there's no way I want 50 houses here?
yeah,
And then what do you do there? How do they fill it out?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, Nat, you and I and some people are probably really good at percentages, but. There are probably a lot of people that when we add the numbers up, it would come out to 275 or
Yep.
something.
well, that's okay.
Yeah.
You can always normalize it.
That's
Yeah.
okay. But if you give them a number and then ask them, how many of that 50, well, you could say something like, okay, if we're going to add 100 houses, how many of this and this and this and this? That would be the
Yeah.
same thing. Okay.
Yeah,
I'd say if if you can't understand percentages, I could put in parentheses, think about it this way. If we're going to add 100 houses, how would you like them divided up?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think as Tim says, though, that might kind of raise the hackles or put some bias into the questionnaire.
well, I was just wondering how somebody would fill that out if they say, well, I only want
Yeah.
20 houses, then what do you do?
All right, if you only were going to add 10 houses, how would you divide them up? That would work too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
The other thought I had was, I mean, some part of the problem is the Lyme Common District, the Lyme Center District and the Commercial District are pretty constrained. And they're the areas where you were talking about higher density,
yeah.
so should we ask, do people want to expand those areas?
Yeah, well, I think I had a question.
Did you?
The reason that I didn't go there is that I thought that the first question was overwhelmingly the most important here. And I also did not think that this would be a standalone survey. I would say if it, depending upon what kind of answer we get, then we can pursue things like that. Then we can get into the weeds. And I think it's appropriate to go there. But it didn't seem like it would be appropriate to go there there's just too many different scenarios, CB, I thought.
Well, except,
Try and explain.
yeah. So Peavy was thinking that we would make things more specific,
Yeah.
and not cover the whole thing, just do more specific areas. I don't know. I think Nat, I like your questionnaire. It's just that I think some of it's a little complicated. I mean, I think people are gonna get lost here a little bit. You kind of have to keep it simple, stupid. Because I had one question, in which of the following districts would you like to see growth in Lyme, housing growth in Lyme? And I just listed the district.
Rich Mengy asks the kind of questions good idea to mixed building and talks a little bit about what the zoning is, what the areas are,
Oh, yeah, my number 5,
4 and 5.
yeah.
4 and 5 kind of a bit reach out to that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't submit questions because I thought this was like, you guys covered everything. And I was trying to think about how to operationalize
Yeah,
the best pieces from each of you. To sort of,
well, we think we have something for you in the future, so we're not.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. There's something about,
Your condensation or condensing of this into a wonderful format.
there was some discussion that I vaguely remember about Lyme Center. David probably knows about this. Whereas it's gonna be difficult to add things, right, in Lyme Center?
Yeah, well, there's,
Why is that?
the brook,
Right, I mean, to do infill in Lyme Center is not easy, right, or it's.
it will not be easy because you have the brook and state regulations, for septic are going to get in the way.
that's, the brook is mostly on the right as you go up.
As you're going up most of them, but then it goes over at the very north end of the Lyme Center District. It goes over onto the,
It goes back to the left.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
But I mean,
but
I'm
you're-
thinking like Acorn Hill and Baker Hill,
yeah,
Yeah,
that's not part of the.
that,
it's not,
no, it's not.
But I guess my point was that in the past, when we've talked about, expanding the Lyme Common District and Lyme Center, we've sort of said, well, Lyme Center isn't gonna work too well, the very Lyme Center district. For reasons, certain reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be great if we.
Oh, it would be
could, but-
fantastic. Yeah, and there's, you could expand it. Again, I would look at topology. You have some very steep properties going up.
right?
You mean
big-
expand the district?
Yeah, but if you're going to look at expanding the district, look and see if it's actually buildable.
Yeah,
Right,
Because, expanding it and saying, hey, great, we expanded it, and then find out that, none of the property is,
doesn't help anyway.
right, it doesn't, it's too steep, or there are conservation easements on it that prevent.
is that the big field behind the academy building, is that?
Is that part of the?
No,
district?
that's not part of the common.
So the Lyme Common District's pretty small.
It is very small,
I can't remember,
It's basically around the development that is there. It's basically put there to say, recognizing when zoning was put in, this area is a little bit different than all the other places.
Yeah.
There is a village here, that, there was a post office, rich agency was there, so it had commercial use.
Right.
So it was recognized as a different area, so it was created.
Right,
Um,
of course, I mean, we talk about being close to the post office and restaurants and whatever, and it's.
Not anymore.
There's nothing.
Not
there.
anymore.
yeah, and, you trying to make things walkable, but, walking down Dorchester Road, especially during ski season
Right,
in the wintertime is not advisable.
No.
yeah,
Um,
so I guess we're saying the Lyme Common District isn't that feasible to really.
The Lyme Center,
I mean, Lyme
Center,
Center.
yeah, yeah.
Lyme Center just isn't really that feasible for infill and all that stuff.
at Lyme Common, you could definitely go north on Route 10. You could extend it south on Route 10. Going out East Thetford Road. Most of those fields are in conservation, there are easements on them. So you would end up having to go out past the corner. To gain. Although if the folks that just bought the Record Farm. I think they very much would like to be able to put in some multi-housing in there.
Right, but isn't the Record Farm an easement, right?
Part of it is, but where the farm buildings are,
Oh, you're right.
is not. And so there is definitely
So
some.
that would be a good spot.
It'd be a great spot. I mean, it would, you know, easy access to the school and just cross the street and walk down through the playing field.
Right.
Absolutely a place to,
Do you know how many acres they have that's not an easement?
I don't know, but
I think
know-
I think it's like 40.
Well, the whole thing's 40, but they must have like maybe 4 or 5 acres that
I
aren't.
think it's like 6, if I,
Hmm.
but I don't quote me on that because I'm not.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he knew the whole thing was 40.
Oh, I was thinking, I guess,
Because
yes. The extension down into where Record Ridge has a shared space as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all in conservation.
Yeah, and so, but I think, you know, the Lyme Common District kind of cuts the Record Ridge. The property in half, that where there is. You know, buildable space, and so
Right.
maybe extending it around. That
Well, they-
property to include it all.
Yeah,
you
they
know.
might take down those barns, you
Yeah.
know, that concrete.
Yep, that's
Oh, that's,
all part of the plan.
yeah, then to put it, and that's in the common district.
That's in the Lyme Common, but if you know, if you were to. Expand the density in Lyme Common and then expand the actual district to include all that property.
Yeah.
You would gain. You know, quite a bit,
Yeah,
and make it easier to develop that.
well, it might be a.
Yeah, so it's that's something to consider, going out
Yeah.
Dorchester Road. Again, you're gonna start getting into the brook and into Tannery Falls. And that's, you know, there's not a lot of area that could be developable. You go out Market Street and you're starting to get into some real steep.
Yeah, up Dorchester Road, it sort of flattens out and there's some area up in there. And yeah,
Yeah, you could go a little bit further up, you know, you could get, Paul Mayo's place and then, Reagan,
Charles Reagan, no, he's,
no, his father,
Oh, it's.
Wally Reagan. He owns a couple of those properties.
Uline. Ken Uline out there, used to be,
Yeah, I'm not sure.
That's just before you get to the Tannery Falls.
yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, you know, going up to that area.
Mhm.
And then, of course. There's some, you know, development ability on Route 10 South.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's probably a lot, I mean, the whole commercial district, right?
Well, I'm saying, south of the Lyme Common, just, you know, you had,
Oh, yeah.
you know, Bailey Farm and.
Below that, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, well, the whole commercial district has been sitting there for 36 years, I mean, they haven't.
What's this?
The commercial district has been sitting there for 36 years. Nobody really doing anything with it,
Which commercial district?
in south of the
By you,
110. Yeah,
There isn't that much commercial. There wasn't until they had a zoning amendment.
well, but on the east side of the road, right, David, where does it start? It starts at, and it goes all the way to Pond View.
Yep.
Part of Pond View, I think, is in the
Oh.
commercial district, and then it
Yeah,
goes
it's-
all the way up.
if you look at the east side of the road, there's not been a lot of. Development on the west side, you know, the school has taken up a
Right.
huge portion of that, and then you have. The condos,
Right, right, 84.
85 Dartmouth College Highway.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I was thinking more of the east side, you know, that's.
yeah, the east side
there.
definitely has some potential. But again, it's been sitting there for 35 years.
Right,
So it takes, you know, somebody. Who wants to develop it, which again is what I think one of the big hangups is, it's finding. An owner that wants to develop it.
right.
And how many units are in Pondview?
I believe 15.
15?
Really, that many?
Yep,
I mean, those are probably 15 of the most affordable units
in town.
in
Yes.
town, maybe in the Upper Valley.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is my guess, because they're pretty darn small.
right.
It's
Yeah, I've
almost
never
like, be
been
careful
in-
what you wish for, because all of a sudden those 15 households will get displaced by something that's gonna be much more expensive
Right.
to rent.
Right. Yeah, I've never been inside. You live,
I live there.
are they all one bedroom?
No, some of them are 2 bedroom, but they're again, very small bedroom.
Yeah.
You know,
And is
again-
your living room your bedroom?
No, there was a separate,
Really?
I mean, at $400 a month, when I was making not much more than that. It worked great. I mean, I have no regrets living there. It was not the greatest place to live.
I mean, they seem like they're full all the time, and I
Well,
can't
again,
imagine.
because of the cost, they
Yeah.
are very, I think they're now double the price what I was paying.
Yeah,
Right,
But that's still, when you look in the Upper Valley,
yeah,
$800 a month is not a,
right. Well, that's a good point, Rich, that if they do, if there was a major change there, the rents would be way higher.
yeah,
They would lose.
oh, you would lose all of that because,
Yeah.
you're not going to put in 15 new units, because that building, you're not gonna refurb that building.
Needs to go up.
Right, well, remember when, or you were here, David, when Jay Barrett came
Yeah.
in? That was what, 5, 6 years ago, more than that. He was hired by somebody, Jay Barrett, the architect, came to the planning board and had all these ideas about what they were gonna do it on view.
Hmm.
But I don't remember who he was hired by.
He's hired by the owner.
What
Oh, was
happened,
the
what
owner?
happened to that?
They decided they didn't wanna pursue it because of cost.
Yeah, they didn't do it, but he,
Home on the Connecticut is the other place that's got multiple units.
yeah.
right.
Yep. Hmm.
Right,
And they are in trouble at the moment.
they are,
I believe it was close to 65 violations by the fire marshal's office,
from the state.
or that's what he's looking at, 65 violations,
Oh, dear.
What kinds of things, though?
fire alarm violations. I don't know that, I haven't seen the list, but because the inspection only happened this week,
So he's gonna have to spend some money.
he's gonna have to spend a lot of money on cleaning that up.
And I mean, it had central sprinkler systems.
Yeah, but they've been painted over.
Oh, great.
I remember when that was built, when Wayne built that building,
Yeah, and they put in,
they had huge
Some-
took him a long time to get it inspected and he had to change a bunch of stuff. Because when they built it incorrectly, didn't meet all these specs. That was a while ago.
and the fire marshal's office is looking at it as an apartment building. So
As a what?
As an apartment building
Oh.
under their code,
Yeah,
and, they don't care about how long the leases are, it's considered an apartment building. And it doesn't meet code.
So we were talking about districts and areas that might be expanded. How do we do that? How do we develop a question that allows us to ask that question?
no, how specific do we want to get? Would you want to have a question that would say, would people be amenable to,
I mean,
How
first
do
of all,
you
nobody
regulate
knows
fraud?
where the Lyme Common District starts and stops. They
Right.
probably can understand that,
It's
you know,
around,
Dowds and the stores are in the district, but then when you start getting further out, they don't know where it ends
right?
and something else starts.
and, as I've always said, when you start asking, where do you want to expand, you need to make sure that you can,
You could.
yeah, because asking people, do you want to expand around the common?
Yeah, that does.
They may say, okay, yeah, great infill. And, then when people try to do it, they can't get septic put in, they don't have enough, you know, there are no buildings, you have wetlands on either side of the Lyme Common District.
Right.
And your infill potential may not be as high as you would like. And so I think if you're going to ask the question of where do you want people to expand, you need to know that you can expand there.
But
You know,
you don't want to preclude all of the possible solutions to that by overthinking it. I mean, if that's what the town wants, then that could be conceivably a direction to go.
Right, unless we knew for sure that you never could, because there wouldn't be any septic at all, you know what I mean?
Well, even that can be solved. I mean,
Maybe,
you just need to know, in my view, you can't overthink this and decide, no, we can't ask that question because we don't want to know the answer to it.
Right.
fair enough.
yeah,
But the other thing we talked about at one point was allowing cluster developments, and that's not any of these questions. that
Well,
I-
it is. I did
I
have
have-
cluster in my, in one of my choices.
Number
Oh.
two, yes,
and I said,
I think you also need to be clear on what you consider cluster, because,
Oh, yeah,
you know, I think if you ask Rich Brown, he's going to look at, apartment buildings, townhouses, as, you know, single buildings with a large number of units as a cluster development. If you talk to somebody else, they may say a bunch of small houses
right,
is a cluster. And so I think you need to be clear in your minds what it is you're asking for as a cluster.
right.
Or if it's all of those, but, you know, be clear that with people, you know, what it is as a cluster.
Right, how many units? would
How many
be each
units,
unit?
or is it, are they in a single building? Are they in in single family housing in a small area?
because Tim had at one point talked about allowing cluster developments in the rural district.
Yeah, I
Who,
mean,
Tim Cook.
Tim.
Yeah.
yeah, in certain areas, I think, I mean, it's certainly, I mean, my way of thinking is that it's better to have housing together and protect, yeah, like they do in Europe.
Yep.
You know, I mean, it's so, you know, because they have all this open space and they've got houses together, which,
Right.
rather than having these Levittown,
Exactly.
you know, with every acre, every half acre house. So I think that's definitely a way we should go. Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
isn't the concept of cluster to um, on a given parcel of land to increase the density in one area and thereby decrease the density in another
Yep.
adjacent.
Yes,
And you know, it's sort of hard to explain all of that, but the whole you know, the term cluster development actually does a pretty good job of that. And that's probably why it's hung around in the vernacular. So you know, I think more people are going to understand what a cluster development is than, you know, I don't think we need to define it too finely.
well, we could have definitions available that people could
You could
choose
do
to
that.
read if they needed further clarification. That
Yeah.
wouldn't be required to labor through to be able to get to the questions, but would be available.
right. Yeah, I get all these construction magazines and all this stuff, and they always have, you know, because this is other parts of the country, but they have these. all
Yeah,
these
there's
cluster
no leach field here.
houses. It's probably not.
Exactly.
But yeah, it does seem to make sense to have things together, and then, I mean, we sort of do that now in a way where with the ag soil, we require that what is not built on is protected. So you do the same idea, I guess.
They're all in town sewer, I'm sure.
Yep, which
Makes a whole bunch of difference.
it does. It really, you know, not having that infrastructure You know, it increases. You know, the cost of a well,
Yep,
you know, $5,000 to $10,000, and for a single family home for a septic, 25 to 30,000, so you're starting at $50,000 before you even
have a
get going,
foundation.
you know,
Right.
and then you add the cost of the property, the cost of putting in your access, your foundation.
Yep.
I remember this when I went and built my house, it's like, oh my God, all this stuff on top of each other that I didn't really think
Stuff that
about.
you don't even see, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think about it at the time, it's like it just added and added and added the wall, and,
Well,
Um,
that's why we have wealthy people building $1 million houses.
I'm just gonna say, that's why we have mansions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Exactly. But there again, the state, they need some kind of subsidy, grants.
Yeah. Well, that's, one of the issues I see with, doing, very small lots or, 2 acre lots that the state are mandating that, the intent is to try to, get more housing. Now, I do understand that if you build a lot of high-end housing, that does tend to free up lower end housing, it frees up. But, if you were to do, 2 acre zoning, 2 acre lot zoning, the assessing department's gonna look at that and say, okay, now your lot, has the ability to be split more times with more housing, to create more housing lots, which is the front acreage of your property, which is the most expensive part of your property, and you could shift, property, values higher because your potential for development is greater.
Right.
Whereas at the 5 acre, you don't have that potential.
Right.
And then you also, as, because housing is in such demand in Lyme, you put in, smaller lots, the price of those lots could be driven up by demand.
Right.
Yeah, I don't,
Right, and
we don't know that for a fact, but
Yeah.
that could be an outcome, and all of a sudden, we have, a bunch of new houses that are very expensive houses
On small lot.
on small lots, and it doesn't end
Yeah.
up really helping the situation.
Well, one amusing way to talk about cluster housing would be to call 85 Dartmouth College Highway a cluster housing development.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
It is.
it is.
And it's beautiful. So can you say to people, more places, would you like more developments like 85 Dartmouth College Highway?
Yeah, of course, when Buzzy built that, it was all commercial.
A lot of it was, there was
Pretty
always,
much.
always apartments in the upper
Yeah, that was
levels,
some, basically, he was
Yeah.
building as commercial originally, and then he just,
D'Artagnans.
I think the
Computing.
concern I think people would have is that's an architectural style that is that fits in well
Yes.
with the community, and anybody that's many people that would be building something with that kind of density would not have that kind of aesthetics in mind, and I don't think there's any way we can regulate the aesthetics, so.
No, but in order to
If
be
you wanna
commercial,
get projects like Jonah built
Mhm.
in Fairleigh, which he now regrets.
right, which he just got an award for.
Yeah, is that right?
he did,
Yeah,
Oh,
high
Um,
efficiency.
I know,
Why does he regret it?
well, he said at the meeting, I really give him credit for saying that.
I was astounded that he
I
said
mentioned
that.
something about it, that it wasn't the most, I was trying to be tactful. It was probably the second ugliest building in the Upper Valley. No, I didn't quite put it that way, but anyway, I was saying it wasn't, but he had to do that because he had a 40-foot height limit and he had to have 3 stories.
Yep.
But he said at the meeting, he said, well, I'm not gonna do any more like that. He said, I don't like it either.
And he
He's
got a
gonna
big
do-
award up in Burlington.
But,
It was a big award up in Burlington for,
So, as a resident of Fairleigh, and I drive by it quite often, doesn't bother me anymore.
yeah,
You know,
It's
I
like the
drive,
balls on the
Bothers me
bridge.
every time I drive by.
yeah, well, you don't see it as often as I do.
It's like the balls on the bridge. Nobody notices them anymore.
You know, if you-
Well, I do every time I go across. I think they're wonderful. I wish they'd done them in granite.
if you look at there's a
They
cell
cheaped out
tower,
on them.
in between 91 and Route 244 up on a hill. It's ugly. It sticks out like a sore thumb and I drive by it twice a day.
Yeah.
And I don't notice it anymore. I might see it and say, oh yeah, there's the cell tower and then
Yeah.
go on with my day. It doesn't, you know,
Yeah,
the,
well, you can get used to anything.
you can, yeah,
They
you
say
get used to it.
Used to hanging if you're
Well,
long enough.
but I'm saying, you know, the,
Yeah,
as long as it's not, you know, it may be a little bit out of place. It doesn't,
well, it's a New Jersification of New England, but anyway.
I'm personally more happy to have, good housing in downtown Fairleigh
Yeah,
and, a coffee shop, even though I don't go there. Because to me, we're losing our downtown. Businesses are going away. A lot of things are converting into housing. And, I think, you know, our downtown is just gonna end up going away.
Hmm.
And I don't want that to happen. So I'm very happy to see mixed use housing. Buildings go in and see the people who are living in the downtown area who would be walking to the various stores.
Right.
And, you know, they're the ones that are gonna keep it going.
Yeah, it's hard, and when I owned Fairleigh Feed, you know, 'cause
Right.
we were trying to get customers to come from Norwich and Hanover, and they just won't do it, you know, they just won't come that up the interstate, you know, from
Yeah.
that area, so it's tough, it's.
It
tough.
is, and you know, we lost the feed store and it's now an electrician's
Yeah,
storage building, and which is fine, but
yeah, there's several storage areas along, like an old marina,
yeah, there's a Fairleigh
Marine.
Marine, but it's still,
but there's a place like where the ice cream thing is, a big old red shambly thing.
yeah, that's Lakeside Auto. They own,
Oh,
they
It
have,
used to be Fox.
yeah, they used to be
That was the
Fox.
original
Oh, yes,
Fox.
it was, yep.
And,
Yeah.
But no, even another place, further down. Oh, yeah,
Yeah, well,
so let's kind of try to wrap this up.
do we wanna, excuse me, I don't-
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, do we wanna look at all these questions that everybody's done and try to put the ones together we like and come up with one question?
Yeah,
Next time, I don't know if that would be beneficial or not, but.
I- Yeah, I think it would be. I don't know if we have time at this point
now,
to,
maybe
Well, no,
we
I
could
meant-
do
I
it
meant
at
for next
home
time.
yeah,
Yeah.
on a computer with
to do
sure.
it- To do it.
cut and paste.
Because some of them are similar.
Yes,
I think
so
some
we
of
can
them
get rid
are.
of- Yeah,
Do other people like Nat's format? I mean, with, you know, percentages, whether we do percentages or
Counts
number-
or, yeah.
counts, but well, I guess think about that in terms of how we might
Yeah.
want to format it, and then yeah, let's look at the other questions that other members put together.
yeah.
And yeah, we're not gonna be talking about this. We're gonna be talking about the zoning amendments next time, but
Mhm. Yeah, I think the principles that we've got laid out everything is essentially here. We just need to tighten it up and organize it a bit.
yeah,
I think that the description of like what the current inventory is could be helpful to say what you're looking at in town is this many housing units
yes,
for a population of this, and then
Right.
describe what the lot sizes are for the different districts. Just as statement of, you know, like this is what we have now.
Mhm.
Right,
That's a good idea.
yeah, because I think Rich said right at the beginning that we have 693 housing units as of 2020. The other,
So, good night, thank you.
Good night.
it's,
Thank you,
Drive
Sue.
careful.
well, the other thing maybe we should talk about is how specific we want to get in this questionnaire, right? Because I don't know, it's hard. I mean, do we want to actually ask people, would you like to see increased housing in this area? Or do we want to keep it more general?
I think keep it more general.
Because you were thinking maybe we want to get more. specific.
Well, I was gonna. Specific in the sense of, specific scenarios. Like a cluster development of, 10 acres with 5 houses or something like that.
And then you'd have to sort of ask where they would want that.
Exactly, exactly. And then, barn conversions up to 6 units with, 6 parking places.
Right.
Of barns that exist as of, 2025.
Right.
So that people aren't building barns to
Right.
convert, but
Right.
we're trying to help people.
Yeah, so maybe we need to do a few more questions, make some more questions up.
And I'm wondering if you want to just ask the question, what do you think about multifamily? New multifamily? I mean, that,
I think
new multifamily is going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. And, I know a lot of people are completely against that, and that's fine, but I think you should at least ask the question, because that's,
Well, I had one question. It said, do you feel multi-unit dwelling structures up to 6 units in one building, quote unquote, are appropriate in Lyme, and if so, in which districts?
Yeah.
I mean, I had
That
one.
kind of question is almost impossible to answer, Tim. I mean, it's like, it's got too many layers. And it's going to be even harder to analyze.
Well, I think, but basically we're asking, do people want 6-unit 6-unit buildings in where would they want them? Which districts? Right?
well, I think you.
What
you
if
could-
they don't want 6-unit buildings? Then where does the question go then?
You could have, and you could have a blocks for.
What if they want 4 units?
Yeah, okay, I don't know, yeah.
I'm just saying that it sort of breaks. You have to establish some, general directions first. So if you establish that maybe this person filling out the survey is very enthusiastic about housing, then you can add, then that survey is going to go in one direction. And then you can ask things like, well, how much of a 4-family or more? How much of a cluster home? How much single family? How much, this or that? Then it becomes a little easier to analyze.
Yeah,
But one question that sort of meanders on and is obviously looking for a certain answer is going to end up being hard to analyze.
yeah, well, it basically just asking which district do you think 6-unit buildings should be in?
Well, it could be a
Yeah.
follow-up question of if you say, I would like to see more multifamily, 6, up to 6 units, then where?
Yeah,
Instead
Yeah,
of,
follow-up questions are probably easy to generate if we use something like Rich suggested, the Google questionnaire.
yeah,
Yeah.
But they're tricky to generate. Because then you get to skip to question 3, or if you said no, then skip to question 9. So it just I don't know. It's hard to do those on paper.
Yeah, I think we would plan on doing this on Survey Monkey or whatever we did before, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I was wondering,
I think it'd be easier to get out to people.
yeah, we don't have a budget.
That's the problem.
yeah.
Do you get the sense the select board?
Wait. Did we get $1,000 from the select board? Wasn't that
I think
David
maybe-
John's promise?
I don't know if it's a promise, but I think he would try. I don't know, that they trimmed the budget severely this year. They took a lot of things out. And, so I don't know, overall, the select board, where they would find funds to do that. We all lost.
Yeah, the
But-
board doesn't spend.
But
that
Survey
much.
Monkey and 100 paper copies at the library would probably be all right.
Right, and then that, 100 paper copies I could do in-house.
Yeah.
That's easy enough to do, so it's not a huge, the cost
Well,
is printing and sending them out, and
Yeah, the postage.
the postage and, printing and getting them into the envelope.
Yeah.
And
Well, if it-
even
if
at the
the-
last survey, they didn't, seal the envelope, so I had to go through and seal every single one. So it's 3 hours of my time.
Seinfeld episode or somebody was poisoned with one of those.
Well, I used a little tool
But
that
don't
if
we
I was
need
not
like
gonna click.
1,200? How many do we need? 1,200?
Yeah, it's
More?
somewhere,
Our population is what, 7?
I'd have to look, well, we sent it to, all the postal, it was a postal patron. So I got the numbers from the post office.
But then if there's two, husband and wife, we have to send. two.
That was the beauty of the electronic.
Right, it's one per household.
Well, I think you
Well,
should say, I think you should, I don't think you should say one per household. I think you should say one per voter. I mean,
Yes.
What I'm saying is that when we sent it out last time, I think it was either one or we put 2 copies in,
Oh, I see.
but it was not,
The actual mailing.
the mailing went to.
well, the mailing is one per household. Yeah, well, you could tell them to copy it or come down to the library and copy it or something like that.
Yeah,
But
not
we
a
live in
problem.
an age where one per household doesn't work.
Oh, no, not at all. But like I said, for the mailing, that's the best we can do is to.
Yeah.
Unless you want to individually, label every single envelope to every single voter. Or-
We don't want to do that.
Yeah, and people won't copy it. I mean, to really get more than one person in the household to vote, you almost have to have a.
Yeah, I think we should put in 2 copies in the last time, just so that we could handle.
Yep.
Getting more, but.
Yeah.
Once you get over those 2 copies, though, because it was, I think, 2 pages, we were running close to the weight limit,
Too heavy, yeah.
and then we'd be upping the postage.
Okay, well, I guess to be continued. But let's look at the other questions and see if we can come up with more.
Yep.
Yeah.
Either supplemental questions or maybe a few more questions that would complement where we've got started. And with that, do we have a motion, Hebe?
Move to
Yeah.
I think
conclude the
we're
meeting.
gonna conclude this meeting. That would be great.
Well,
Seconded.
hopefully before long, we'll have a full board again.
Yeah.
Or 2 wandering people can come back.
Yeah,
Vicky's been gone a long time, right?
at least 3 meetings, I think.
I think we're all done.
Yep, that's here, so I'm not gonna
Oh, okay.
kick
Okay.
him off until he's ready to
Now we
leave.
got our new.
Oh, I'm
books.
ready.
Okay, I'm gonna end the meeting if that's okay with you.
Okay, see you later.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Okay.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
What's the new book?